Okay, right. Just like welcome everybody to the Building Control Digital Show and Tell, 8th of July 2025. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Alpha kickoff meeting. I'd like to also introduce our newest members, Tim Gallooni from City of London, Alan Chambers from Bracknell, and Claire Taylor from Lambeth. I'd also like to thank our partner, MLCLG, for funding the Alpha project. I'd like to introduce the agenda for today's meeting, which will mean a roadmap and Trello overview, pain points for the review, survey, early findings, and form fields and mapping processes, and the metrics we have to provide.
Thanks very much, Nitesh. Okay. Yeah, so first up, we've got the Alpha roadmap that we've been working on. You can see there we have various different colours. So we've got the Lambeth team specific tasks. We've been busy preparing for the Alpha kickoff by doing a lot of contacting with our partners, reviewing the pain points from discovery, and also looking at developing a press release. Lots of things still to do. We're in the process of procurement. That's always quite a long, lengthy process when you're working in a local authority. I'm sure other local authority officers will recognise the delays that you can experience there. And as well as our Alpha roadmap, we have been updating our Trello, which you can see on the next slide, and our Slack channel has gone live again. If you want to check out our Trello board, it does have a public facing option. You won't be able to change anything, but you can go in and have a look and see what we've been up to if you're interested in following our progress. So next up, I'm going to pass you over to Dalil, I think, to look at pain points.
So here's some screenshots of the pain point that we've gathered them and we collected them and from our research as a discovery phase. So a couple of screenshots here. What we did, we asked the partners, the officer from our partners to score these pain points on the potential to be in the alpha phase. And in my next slide, I'll be able to show you the highest pain point that got scored. So I will go through some of them. The top one, it's related to the customer journey, that they are not able to see the online progress of their applications. Second thing, it's impacting the officers, not the customer. Here is about some manual work about rekeying of email and files and the system. Again, the third one is related to customer, impacting customers. It's about that customer, they need to call, make phone call to know the status of their application or to ask something. There's no online interaction with the system, and so on. So we asked the officers from partners to score them from 0 to 3. 0 is not likely to be at the alpha phase. 1 to be slightly, 2 moderately to be possible in the alpha phase, and 3 very likely. And some of the finding in the next slide will be able to show you that what this tells us is that transparency and communication are major pain point for customers. For officers, the manual process and system integration are key issues. What we could, some early finding from these information, that what we potential area that we need to work on is the online progress tracking, inspection notes, and management, application status, visibility for customer, and reducing the manual work. In my next slide, I will go through the surveys, also some of the exercise that we did around surveys, and I will pass it to Stephen.
Thanks, Galil. Yeah, so I'm going to go through the surveys that we've sent out to all of the partners who are joining us now in the alpha. So reason we're doing this is part of metrics and evaluation. We want to be able to say, when we do make recommendations, or when we later on come to devise a implement something that we've improved as part of this program, we want to be able to say, what was the baseline? How do we know that that's actually going to improve something? And also how might we quantify things like benefits, time saved, and money saved, that kind of thing. So to start off with, some of the early work that we've been doing in the alphas, the Lambeth team put together a survey of some early metrics questions that we know we want answers to. We've had responses, from most of the partner councils already, telling us how they process competent persons notifications, which is something we might be making a recommendation to improve. So we have some early responses there showing that it's mostly automated for most of the partners, but some of the partners it's completely manual. And some partner councils have it as completely automated, which is obviously the ideal situation for these kind of routine applications. With inspector initial notices, something that we've heard is that all of the partners who've responded so far are manually processing these, which is in line with our assumptions. And similar story for reversion notices, which are other kinds of building control applications. And we've got some other data coming through there, which is great. So on top of those types of applications, we also wanted to understand how different kinds of regulatory reform are being reflected in the practice at different building control teams as well. So we've been asking about how might the building safety levy be monitored and collected, and we can see that there's a variety of approaches there. Sometimes it's going to the building control team, and sometimes it's going to Section 106 SIL kind of teams who are already implementing similar things, monitoring similar things. And yeah, what kind of software might be involved in that as well, and how much of a need is there for our existing systems to keep up? Most councils, or most of our partners rather, have still to decide how they're going to monitor and collect these things and in what software. And now I'm passing you over to Claire, I think, to take us through mapping of the initial notices.
Yep, so we haven't been sitting still, and we've been looking firstly at mapping initial notices, and from this work we understand that there are 81 registered building control approvers in England, and we've pulled some data from Lambeth in the period January 24 to December 24, and at Lambeth have received initial notice applications from 40 different registered building control services. And I'll take you through on the next slide a bit on the mapping analysis. So we started off downloading the template from the government website and collected the building and approved inspector names off our report from our data at Lambeth. We then broke down the fields from the initial notice forms, and from that, we took the top 5 registered building services that have submitted initial notice forms applications to Lambeth, and we compared those initial notices and the data that had been submitted within those forms, so that we could work out whether there was any duplications in terms of that, or whether there was any aspects in terms of looking at streamlining and digitizing the initial notice form. And we've so far come up with some ideas in terms of making improvements here, which we will discuss with the partners further to see if that can form part of the alpha work. And just on this slide picks up on the government form 1 for the initial notice, and our data collection in terms of the data that is put into these forms from each of the different providers.
Okay. If I can get over to me for the metrics. So we've been obviously collecting metrics in Discovery, and these are some of the things that we've been kind of looking at. I think from what you've seen just now, some of the interesting metrics we're going to be looking at, you saw in the early stuff that Dalil was showing, the customer call checking applications was a customer pain, but also that's a council, a local authority pain, because that means more administration, more time having to answer those phone calls. So that could be an area where we see wins for both customers and also officers. I mean, actually, a lot of these areas that we're finding issues with will be wins for both sides. So that will be a metric for us to consider to start collecting information around. And I think also it was interesting in some of the material that Stephen was just showing. It was interesting to see the amount of manual on some of those standard forms, like initial notices from approved inspectors. And that was something we found in Discovery as low-hanging fruit, where we could potentially look at, can we get a standard form that we could put at least on the demonstrate by all the partners, putting it on their local authority websites, and trying to encourage whether or not encourage those approved inspectors to use that standard form, because then that would save us lots of time instead of having to use lots of different forms all the time. And I know, Nitesh, we've been talking about maybe asking MHCLG for support in potentially mandating that in the future. So that would be one for us to watch. Those of you that are familiar with our Discovery report, you can go through there and have a look at some of the other low-hanging fruit we discussed. And finally, just touching on today, what we're all doing, we're here in the lovely offices of Bath and North East Somerset and Keynsham. They really are lovely offices. For our first kick-off workshop. And this will include thinking about ways we're going to be working, particularly for those who are new to Agile, because we've grown our partners this time round. We'll also be looking at that low-hanging fruit opportunities and reviewing the pain point mapping and prioritising them by value. So that's the end of today's show and tell. Our last slide here shows all of our social media. You can email us if you want to know more at digitalbuildingcontrol@lambeth.gov.uk. Please check out our blogs. There's going to be a new one posted soon. We're on LinkedIn, Digital Building Control. You can find us there. We're on Twitter, or X nowadays, @HelloDigitalBC. So please follow us, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks very much.